All right, Luke Ronnestrand checking in for the virtual Musky, Minnesota Musky Expo. Got us some interesting times here. Hope everybody's being safe and everybody's healthy, but gonna check in for my garage here and gonna cover quite a few topics. I'm gonna try and make this fun for everybody. And I couldn't be Greg Thomas and do this from out in a boat. So what I figured I could start off with is giving you a tour of my boat, and then we're gonna go over and talk about some screenshots, some of my new Gen 3 screenshots from last year, some of the cool things that we can learn about that. Then I'm gonna cover some of our lure trends from last year, our feeding window trends from last year, and our months, what months of the year were good from last year. Kind of compared to 2018, there's actually some kind of interesting little nuggets of information that stood out between the 2 years. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is some spring lures and just some tackle and equipment and things like that. Feel free to ask any questions at any time. Basically, we're going to be giving away a Sims Challenger jacket from this seminar. We're going to basically take whoever asked the question and post it either at the end of the seminar or throughout, and we're gonna basically tally those up on Sunday and give somebody a new jacket. But let's start with the boat here. So basically, what this is my Ranger Z521, and this is set up to be a hardcore musky guide boat up on Lake Vermilion. Keep in mind with everything, or the way that I have this rig is for fishing. My goal is to fish 30 to 35 spots a day, and to do that really efficiently, as fast as possible, and to be able to make it through the course of the day. And just some other things. There's some other little things in here that just help make life a little bit easier. So we'll start right here at the trolling motor. So this is a Minn Kota Altera, 36 volt with iPilot. Up on Vermilion, or when you're fishing shield stuff and you're doing extremely long days, a 36 volt is absolutely huge. I also am a ginormous fan of the Altera, because just that little bit of time, from walking from the back of the boat to the front of the boat, putting the trolling motor and going back to the back of the boat, I think by the end of the day at least gets you half a spot or an extra spot at the end of each day. We'll go down a little bit further here, and this is one of my favorite new little brackets that I got last year. This is from Cisco, and this is a trolling motor bracket that's going to help save and add some life to your trolling motor. It's basically a support, similar to like the old Ram mouse that we all used. But this one, you just pop it down, and it slides down just like that. And that is very, very important for keeping your trolling motors functioning and working well. These things take a lot of abuse, and I can say that. Oh, there's my phone. I can say that this thing definitely saved me some repair costs last year and helped to get this motor through the year. And then moving to the front here, we'll go around this side. I have one of the Deckit mounts, and these things are really cool. This one, I have a graph in the back that I use, that you'll either use in the back or put it in the front. But this is just a really cool mount that puts two large graphs right next to each other, so you can have a full screen GPS or GPS with a little sliver of sonar, and then a full side imaging screen, right at your disposal, and just look down and see exactly what's going on. Absolutely love having the 12-inch for the side imaging up here, so my guests get to see what's happening. And then also too, another little saving time, and had these been around a long time ago, I would have saved a lot of money with tickets for not having my lights on. But these new little LED lights are awesome. They're super bright. They're super easy. You don't have to worry about taking a stick in and out. I used to be lazy and just leave my bow light in, and I can't tell you how many times they either bounced out or I broke them. This has been great. They're inexpensive too. I want to say it's $25. So then we'll move further back. Go to the console here, and I have a This is one of the newer from last year, the Gen 3 Helix 10s. The reason why I went with the Helix 10 for this is that the 10s actually have a higher resolution screen. You know, it's just you're a little bit closer, so you can get away with having a slightly smaller screen than the 12-inch, but you can just get that little bit of extra detail. We all know how important side imaging is and how it's changed musky fishing for so many of us. But that is right there. I hope to, at some point this year, also add, potentially be adding the Mega 360. Super excited about that. We'll go back a little bit further here. It's my puck for the iPilot. If we look in the back, here's some really important stuff for getting some extra life, battery life, when you're up fishing the Shield Lakes and doing the Lake Vermilion, or just fishing, you know, like insane hours. This is a 36-volt system. Those are interstate AGM batteries. AGM batteries are absolutely 100% better than just your classic wet cell lead acid batteries. They will get you extra hours, extra spots. They're designed to just last longer too. You can get a couple years out of them. This will be the start of my second year with these, and they're still running strong. And another thing that I still don't understand why these aren't a bigger part of most people's boats, and that's the Minn Kota alternator chargers. I mean, this $160 charger, and how they work is they turn on once your cranking battery is charged sufficiently, and then the extra power from your alternator trickles into that. It starts the charger, and this charges your boat while you're driving from spot to spot. I've run a couple of boats that have had these in it up in Canada for a Canadian opener trip, which is some of the longest hours that I'll fish for the year, and we'd never have battery problems. Super excited to finally have one of these in this boat, and it's going to make a huge difference, and they're just awesome. One of my little bit of boat rigging that I just did was adding this guy up here, and that's just an LED stern light. I ordered that from a place, I want to say it was called like Tricked Out Marine or something like that. I want to say it was like $35 or $37 with shipping, and was super simple, easy to install. I misplaced my stern light last year between here and Lake Vermilion, and this is going to be just a much better option. And then kind of one of the last things I want to talk about here with the boat is the talons here. These talons are shallow water anchors. These are the 12-foot model. Everybody knows about them for bass fishing. Everybody knows about them for crappie fishing, for docking your boat. They're wonderful that way. But I actually do use these quite a bit musky fishing. I'm actually going to hopefully be working on an article for Musky Hunter here on position fishing, where I'm going to talk about using these. And where I'll actually use these is when you find a big group of fish on side imaging, or whether you have a big group of fish that follow. A lot of us have seen that as you go through and you fish these areas, especially with your graphs on, your graphs that everything's very loud, trolling motors making noise. With pressured fish, sometimes those fish can be spooky. And I will actually go into an area, get the boat in the right position, and actually put these down and just hang out for say 5-10 minutes, and then turn everything off and be quiet, and go with the super stealthy approach and start casting with basically nothing out, nothing on. And some of those fish end up getting comfortable and making mistakes. We've caught a few big fish over the years doing that, and it's really powerful stuff. You'll definitely see a big difference. I mean, and obviously if you can't, if this isn't in your playbook, even just doing that with a basic anchor, is something that'll put a few more fish in the boat for you. Like I said, I couldn't be Greg Thomas and actually get out in the boat, and which is awesome. It's so cool that he did that. But just thought I could give you the next best thing and just kind of give you a tour of my boat here. If anybody has any questions about that, just ask at any time. And now I'm going to take you over, and we're going to check out some screenshots from last year. So screenshots are one of my favorite things to talk about at seminars. I find it, I find them incredibly entertaining. It's a glimpse into the underwater world down there. You can definitely see what's going on. But there literally is so much that you can learn, even from just like this. This is my card from last year. And just loading these and just taking a look at the information that you have on there. And like I said, you can learn so many different things from this. Probably the biggest thing that I've learned, or that you get to see, is just kind of a glimpse into the muskies' world, just their behavior, how they react with each other, how there's groups of them, how the boat affects the fish. We all can, remember how you can go down a weed line and have a fish follow, and then you can go down there and see that fish is, go down that same weed line again and not have that fish follow. Well, with side imaging, you can see if that fish is still there or if that fish just decided to leave. The other thing that it really does, and what's made probably the biggest difference for all of us, that are on the water all the time as guides and everything, is just understanding, what the muskie's forage is doing, and just kind of, giving us a better knowledge of, what their bait is doing, what the ciscos and whitefish suckers, things like that, what they're doing and why they're doing it. But one of the biggest things that always, kind of pops out to me as far as when you're looking at screenshots, as far as useful information, again, everything here is, this is everything from last year. It starts at the beginning of the year and goes to the end. But as we all know, the brighter the bottom composition is, it's sand or a harder bottom, the darker it is mud. It's always amazing to me how many interesting photos that I have over soft bottom. And I think that's one thing that really makes Vermilion really awesome and unique, is we have so many shallow mud basins on the lake. Basins that are 6, 7, 10, 12 feet deep. And the bugs are still using that, hatching out of that, just like they are a deep mud basin. And a lot of times, because of those bugs, we have ciscos and whitefish that come in and they're feeding in those shallower water, a lot shallower water than most people assume, and at really interesting times of the year. But again, I can take and show you a few of the examples of this. Right here, this is a big school of ciscos that's right on an outside weed line. So this is a really nice soft bottom here, sandy here. We have a cabbage and some islands. This is an island right here. But that's just an example of the ciscos and the whitefish. Another shallow mud basin. These are either whitefish or walleyes, and this particular area always has a ton of bugs that are hatching in it. And then we'll show you some of the things that are just kind of the fun and interesting things that you see with screenshots. What is definitely amazing is how many muskies, usually when you find one, you'll find 4, 5, 6 of them all using the same area. This one here, there's 4 of them on the screen, and then there was possibly one more that was up here. Let's see here. Yeah, right, this is some really good stuff right here. Yeah, here's a shot of 1 muskie, 2 muskies. Under pressure right now, so I'm having a little harder time finding exactly the shots I was looking for. Oh boy. Let's try. Oh wait, hang on, I know how to find it now. Where is that one? Well, regardless, there's just a lot of really great stuff that you can learn from this stuff. Another thing that's kind of cool is when you take back and you can look back at this and see, like the depth of water that you were fishing when you were taking these screenshots. So keep in mind that every single time you take one of these screenshots, you're taking a picture of something cool or something that you felt relevant or something that you thought was relevant. One thing that kind of popped the other day when I was looking at these, and it's relevant to muskies, but this is actually from smallmouth bass fishing. If you look at the water temperature in the areas where I find fish, found fish. There was a lot of it was between 47 and basically 47 and 54 degrees. So a lot of times when you're sitting there, you're thinking about going out and fishing opener, you know, and when you're starting and looking for warm water, what actually is that temperature that you're looking for? Kind of the same thing when it went down as it pertained to muskies, as I was looking at, all right, the time of the year, and then, you know, like what depth were we fishing in, and then what did we, you know, where were we finding the most, you know, the most muskies? And then again, a lot of these fish were in these muddy, weedy areas. You know, what was the water temperature and why they were in there? It's just gonna give you more clues. And then the last thing I'm gonna talk about here with the screenshots is that basically this is all off of a Gen 3 unit. And I would say the biggest difference between the Gen 3s and the Gen 2s from what I've seen is how far out you can actually read in shallow water. You'll see that a lot of these screenshots, they're clear. They're gonna be clear all the way out to the very end. So we're looking 95 feet off to the left, and we really haven't lost anything as far as the signal strength. If we scroll down just a little bit here, this is gonna roll into, these are more of my Gen 2 stuff. And you're gonna see how the screen gets darker over here. So you're looking at 80 feet, and you're already starting to kind of, things get blacked out a little bit here. This is a really, actually this might be still from my Gen 3. This is a really cool shot right here. This is one of my favorites. This is actually 2 muskies that are buried in the weeds right here. And again, it's something that when you get to fish as much as I do and you're staring at these same spots over and over again, you get to know what to look for and you're looking for something different. But that's 2 of them buried in the weeds. I thought that was one of the most powerful things about these units when I very first started using them, is that you actually could pick, again, muskies out of thick weeds, and that's out of coontail. Scroll down a little bit further here, see if I can find, it's right here. Get a lot of really cool screenshots off of this spot, but this is just a really nice weed finger. There's a muskie, and then there's lots of schools of either small perch, and here's even some walleyes feeding on those same perch. There's one shot that I'm looking for that I have about 7 muskies in one small area. Might be this one. Yep, right here. So they have 1 muskie, 2 muskies, 3 muskies, 4, 5, 6, and then that's potentially a 7th right there. And then this would also be a scenario where I would potentially come back and put the talons down and do the stealthy approach. And then we'll go down. Oh, I'm gonna have to look too far to find my other images. But that's just some of my cool screenshot stuff from this year. Again, I'll show 2 more really cool shots right here. Again, just the clarity of that new Gen 3 stuff is just amazing. So this is that really nice big broadleaf cabbage and some coontail mixed in there. Another just really nice shot of that kind of loose vegetation and a muskie right there. The one thing I can say also that's a little bit different between the 2 units, between the Gen 2 and the Gen 3, is that on the Gen 3s, the muskies do show up a little bit smaller. But just some absolutely incredible stuff. And tons of people are talking about it, and it's amazing. It's gonna change fishing for you. So now we're gonna kind of shift gears a little bit, and hope you guys are all enjoying this, and we're doing a good job of trying to get this at least somewhat interesting, since I've never done a seminar under this format. But so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you guys, basically, I'm gonna kind of compare 2018 and 2019. I don't do a wonderful job of like keeping records or keeping a log or anything like that. But the one thing about it, you talk to anybody that fishes all the time, they generally have a pretty good memory of like things that happen and why. And thanks to cell phone pictures, you can get like some times of things that have happened. And I love all muskies, but we fish on Lake Vermilion, which is predominantly you're fishing for the big ones. So I'm going to kind of break down our 50-inch catches for the last 2 years. But it definitely correlates to all muskies. But there's quite a few interesting things that that stood out from last year, and that was basically our lure selection. Last year we had such a wide variety of lures that we caught 50 inchers on. I'll just share that with you real quick. So in 2019, we caught a 50 incher on a glider, one on a beaver, one on a spoon bait, two on the drifter tackle croc, two on supermodels, two on basically like a bulldog type bait with double number 8s on them, one on a creeper, one on a flap tail, and then one trolling a 12-inch slammer minnow. The year before that, in 2018, it was definitely like the year of the big blade up there. 7 of the 10 50 inchers that we caught out of Lake Vermilion were on big blades. We got 2 on double 9s. We had 2 on double 10s, 1 on a supermodel. We had 2 on the Frenzy stagger 10s, and then we had one 50 incher on the beaver, and then 2 on flap tails. But that was just like a huge contrast there between the 2 years. With last year was definitely like a great year with bucktails up on Lake Vermilion. We caught a lot of fish on the stagger 8s. The Frenzy stagger 8s, we got some fish on supermodels, and the Hirsch's ghost tails were great. This year we just caught 2 big ones on supermodels, and then we caught a lot. I would say our best catching bait for the year definitely was the Frenzy stagger 8s, but it was just definitely more of our big fish. It was just more of an even curve on the types of lures that they were biting. So the other thing that was really awesome about last year was, comparing what was the best month. Last year was an incredibly consistent year for big fish up there, literally from opener until freeze up. So last year we had a 50 incher in June, we had 2 in July, we had 1 in August, we had 3 in September, we had 4 in October, and we had 1 in November. If you compare that to the year before, we had 0 in June, and in July we had 5, in August we had 4, and in September we had 1, 0 in October, 0 in November. So kind of thinking about like kind of the whys of why that may have been. You kind of look back and reflect, and it was like, well, maybe had we been throwing different lures in September, October, November, if we'd been doing things a little bit different, maybe we would have caught more big fish at those times of the year. But not a lot changed in the way I fished before between the two seasons. Probably one of the biggest things is that 2018, everything got really warm and really hot really fast. For this last year, it was kind of a colder year throughout. The other really interesting thing from last year was some of the feeding window stuff. Some things that really stood out was on the east end of the lake, say in like July and the beginning of August, how kind of poor our night fishing was that time of the year. Was kind of unusual, and it was definitely more of the afternoon majors and afternoon moonrise and moonset that were really, really good. But our best fishing for the most part was from like noon to 5 o'clock, noon to 6 o'clock, and it actually got slow as the sun went down. The only time that did begin to change was September, October. We did have a really good night bite again. But just some of the feeding windows again, kind of broke this down into 3-hour periods. But from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. last year, we had 2 big fish. From 9 to noon, we had 2 big fish. From noon to 3, we had 2 big fish. From 3 to 6, we had 2 big fish. From 6 to 9, because of the fall, we had 4 big fish. And then 9 to midnight, we didn't catch a single big fish. The year before that, from 6 to 9, we had 2 big ones. From 9 to noon, we had 2 big ones. From noon to 3 p.m., we had 2 big ones. From 3 to 6, we had 1. From 6 to 9, which was a really good window for me this last year, we had 0. And then from 9 to midnight in 2018, we had 3 big ones, where this year we had 0. So just some really interesting, just things to think about, and why that happens, I don't know, but kind of makes you kind of maybe consider your game planning when it's a lot warmer and hotter like it was in 2018. That early summer can be really good, and then be prepared for some night fishing, where this last year with the cooler year, it was definitely a more steady just more steady throughout the day, throughout the year, just a much more consistent bite. So just some food for thought. I thought some of those things were very, very kind of just interesting. So, but yeah, let us know if you have any questions or if anything's popping up next. But now we're gonna go over and we're gonna take a look at some early season lures and things that I like to do there, and then we're gonna just talk about some other kind of fun equipment stuff and maybe have a few questions by the time we're done with this. But I would say I'll start out with my most important. I'll kind of start off talking about the whole spring fishing thing. What I'm going to be talking about here is fishing in shallow water, fishing in that warm kind of for those kind of immediate post-spawn fish. This is getting back into the bays, getting back into the sandy cuts, warm shorelines, looking for that warm water. Kind of before we're going out and targeting, some of those outside weed line fish and more open water fish later in that early period of time. But this is going to be geared toward fishing in that shallow water. I absolutely love this time of the year for fishing, musky fishing, because you're using parts of the lake that we really very rarely use the rest of the year, and that's getting back into the lily pads, getting back into the creek mouths, way in the backwater, almost like you're bass fishing. And so this is going to be geared towards that. A lot of the lures that we're using for this time of the year, these fish are not back there feeding. These are baits that you're specifically just trying to trigger a reaction strike from. This is one of the few times that I'll actually pick up and throw a lot of gliders, using small twitch baits, using some smaller bucktails, and then surface baits are absolutely fantastic for getting these reaction strikes. But these are just kind of a few of my favorites here. The 4-inch Phantom is kind of just a mainstay, and then that's My Addiction, a Narcan glider. Those are awesome. The small True Glide Guppy is really, really good. And then the Slammers new 5-inch little minnow bait, and then the 7. Those things just have a ton of action. Great for twitching and ripping and getting a reaction strike. I do love throwing spinner baits are awesome for fishing in this time of the year, because that's you're fishing around the newly emerging weeds. You're making casts back into the lily pads, back into the dead reeds, and that's where those fish are, and these come through really, really nice. Then I also like the little number 5 Vibrex, fantastic bait. That's actually just a really key color. White and silver works everywhere. My favorite way to get them, though, is definitely on top. And it seems like the slower moving topwaters work really, really well. That's a Joel Wick creeper. Those are awesome. A Matt Worth creeper, jointed one. Again, you want lures that aren't going to move fast, that are going to make a lot of noise, draw a lot of attention, and you're basically just trying to pull that reaction strike. Tail baits are awesome this time of the year, but one of the tricks to have a lot of good success with these is actually reeling them just fast enough to get the tail to spin. Definitely more of a crawling bait, but it's just slower, more methodical. It just gives them more time to think about it. It's just in their face and basically annoys them in the biting it. The Walk the Dogs are awesome, smaller ones. This is the lure I caught my first muskie last year on. This is a little Evergreen SB 150, but these make a nice little popping sound. They're super easy to use, have a really nice loud rattle. But again, it's just a bait that cuts so well side to side, and it just stays in their face and gets their attention. And then one of the all-time greats for early season Minnesota muskie fishing is definitely the hog wobbler. And this is a bait that you can just strap on and fish all day long, and you're gonna get bites. That's the one thing I can say about the topwater deal is it's not just a morning or an evening bite. You can literally put these things on, start fishing them right away in the morning, and fish them all the way through the afternoon. And the other thing too is, when you're fishing this time of the year, definitely pay attention to that water temperature. That's going to be everything. I would say, usually your best bite's going to start somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. Sometimes, if the season's progressed a little bit further and your fish are really up and active and feeding, then you can be out there early in the morning. But a lot of times you're going to see the fish activity rise with the water temperature. Another super important thing when you're fishing this time of the year is actually taking the time to match your equipment to the lures that you're throwing. This is a really awesome rod that Kurt made me last year from Thorne Brothers. This is a 9-foot heavy, moderately fast bass rod, and it's kicked out to 9 feet. And this rod is absolutely killer for those little gliders, those little twitch baits. It's super light. It has a great tip. It's got some good midsection, but it does have a lot of power. Just great for presenting those lures, and then also fighting the fish is awesome. And then my new favorite reel last year for running this springtime stuff, they're running the spring and the small lures, is the Daiwa Coastal. This is a saltwater casting reel, but it definitely packs a lot of power. 7-to-3 gear ratio, and it's got 17 or 18 pounds of drag. But one of the coolest things about this thing is that big handle. It's actually got almost a full-size Musky handle. So what that's going to do is that's going to give you leverage. For fighting the fish, it's going to give you leverage. Like, that's actually a great reel for small bucktails. And just how well this thing casts is awesome. Just super fun to fight fish with. And just having a setup that's actually designed to fish with these smaller lures will put more fish in the boat for you. But that is definitely makes it a lot more fun. But then, so now I'm just going to kind of go through and talk about just some of the newer equipment. One thing that we are offering at Thorne Brothers now is we are offering a 10-foot rod that you don't have to beg for. And we have a brand new piece of extension material that we're having made that is an oversleeve for our existing Predator blanks. So it makes this rod now 10 feet long. And everybody that's fished with a 10-foot rod, knows what they'll do for you as far as your casting, figure eights, fighting fish. But just going back to the casting is so much easier, and these things will make life easy for you. I can also tell you that the benefits of fishing with a 10-foot rod far outweigh the inconveniences of storage, and they're amazing. Pretty much everybody that I had out in the boat last year that fished with one of these ended up buying one, just because they're just that nice, and it's just going to save you so much wear and tear on your body and so much stress at the end of the day, and it just makes it a lot more enjoyable. Also, a figure eight thing is just spectacular what you can do with these as far as how big of a figure eight you can get. You have so much more room to just get that fish up to speed and just to get them going fast in the straightaways, and to be able to make a nice big wide turn so they can come up and grab the bait. But that is one of the awesome new things for this year. And then my other new favorite thing that came out last year that I was able to fish with till almost the end of the season, when I kicked it out of the boat, when one of my guests who never catches any fish ended up hooking a nice pike. Thank you, Rich. And I got super excited and ended up kicking it out of the boat when I was going for the net. But I fished with this reel for the entire year. I didn't have a single issue with it. It's still an amazing casting reel like the old Lexas, but they changed the clutch and the pinion gears in this, and they tightened it up a lot. And then they also changed and made the gears an even harder material. So it's just an incredibly durable, nice, really comfortable reel to cast with. One of my favorite parts about these reels is they're not too big, but they're also not too small. It has a really nice, big, wide spool. And then they're nice, just a nice size to hang on to. And then they're all really nicely curved right back here. So if you're a palmer, it just fits in your hand. You don't have any rough edges back here to catch your fingers on. And they're just great to fish with all day. I run a lot of the 5s and the 7s. I run the 5s for the extraordinarily hard pulling baits, but I usually only have like 1 or 2 5-to-1 reels in the boat. For the most part, I'm running a lot of the 7-to-1s, and most of the time on a 7-to-1, I like to have them spooled up about this this full. I mean, it's full all the way. You're going to get the maximum performance out of the reel. But if I know that I'm going to be throwing a lot of bigger blades and things that pull really hard, I'll actually drop it down like an eighth or a quarter of an inch. And basically what you're doing is you're just kind of manipulating the gear ratio. The reel is pulling in less inches per turn, and that way you're getting a little bit of extra power. But yeah, this one right here, this is one of our supermodel rods last fall. So this that 7-to-1 has the power to fish with a supermodel all day long. And then I guess the last thing I'll kind of touch on here is just kind of missed this when I was talking about the spring stuff, but was when you're out there and you're fishing with those smaller baits, the other thing too is to match an appropriate leader to those lures. This is a great little bucktail leader right here. I do really like solid steel wire leaders for bucktails. I always think of it as look at it as an extension of that bucktail shaft. That leader is going to be vibrating in the water. It's going to give you a little bit of extra noise and vibration, and it's going to definitely make a difference. Like this, a wire versus a fluorocarbon leader when you're fishing with bucktails can be the difference between catching some fish and catching a lot of fish. And then there's like just a really nice appropriate jerkbait leader. No ball bearing at the end. And these are leaders and lures leaders, and Gene runs some really cool crimps. It kind of sounds kind of salesman-y, but I want to say that those are like aerospace certified or something. His crimps don't come off. I've been definitely really happy with the leaders that I've run from him. And then also on my spring stick here, this is just a little leader, just that I wrapped up in the boat. That's 140 pounds single strand, and just that's a little VMC snap. Just wrap that up with the round nose pliers. And that's something that, if it gets beat up, you just cut it off, throw it in the bottom of your boat and just tie a new one, or just make a bunch of these. They're inexpensive, but that little leader right there will give so much life to your small baits. And I guess, what time is it, Kurt?
I can't see on the phone. You're good. You can talk as long as you want.
But I figured that's kind of all the stuff that I had prepared here. But as long as we're in my garage, I think maybe we can talk about some more lures here. These are so even in my upstairs garage at the house, I still have a bunch of lures that haven't made it down here yet. But this is basically the stuff that I have up at Vermilion with me every year. I'm sure some of you guys that have fished with me think that all of this stuff is in the boat, and it probably is because I'm a lure freak sometimes. But this does all go up with me. It just, again, it's every year it seems like our lure selection gets more and more broad with what we're using and catching, not only fish but big fish on it. Just as everything's evened out so much. I mean, the bulldogs and the cowgirls are still awesome baits, and that's what we've used for so long. But it just seems every year there's something that kind of changes a little bit. But if we walk over here, kind of go through, everybody loves bucktails, and these are kind of the ones that are in my boat every year. I'll start down here. I do use a lot of the Mayhem stuff. I use a ton of the Musky Frenzy stuff, and use a lot of the Hirsch's Ghost Tails. Last year, find where I kind of reorganized everything. Last year, this was probably our best fish catching bait for the year. So that's just the short little Frenzy Stagger 8. I think the biggest reason why these things work so well and catch fish, I mean, obviously they're really high quality, well-made bait, but that clevis, that is the deal. They're just, you don't have that click that sometimes you can feel. It just has a different presence in the water. Obviously the two different blades, the Indiana and then the Colorado, are really good. Seems like every year Nick's got something new that he comes out with that we do really, really well on. It's just, he's definitely a mad scientist with the baits. And then this is this was our Magic Supermodel from last fall. We got two big ones on this. We had a really nice 51-incher, and then I got a big 55-incher during our Vermilion Dam fall outing. on this lure, and I absolutely love those. Those are kind of two of my favorites, but I like to dabble in a lot of different things. I definitely am really, like Josh Rabska makes some really nice bucktails. You know, they're just different wires. You know, some of the different mayhem baits. You know, we have the Thorne Brothers has our heavy series, but then even like this, taking a junior cowgirl and remaking it on 063 wire with the bigger clevis, and then having a heavy weight, just kind of like our, you know, like our heavy, but just with the standard blades. Just something a little bit different like that can make such a big difference. Kind of going over here, the Hirsch's Ghost Tails, these have just kind of become a Lake Vermilion staple, and they work really well in a lot of places. Catch a ton of fish on Ghost Tails every year. This is a custom that we had done for Thorne Brothers last year, black and chartreuse. This one was a very good bait for us. I love the rabid squirrel stuff, and then now we're kind of getting into some of the more custom stuff, the stuff that I make up out in the boat. But I really love the Vibrex bells. Put those on a lot of different baits. Like this is a Frenzy Indiana with a number 6 Vibrex bell. Just a little old Musky Buster bucktail. Like that is a super good bait for me. And some of here's a ghost tail I cut apart and made with 2 Indianas. But just some of these just kind of little creations end up being really good. Sometimes it's just something about having just something that's a little bit different. My friend Mike Lee makes these. These are awesome. He's just some really big articulated flies. He ties all different kinds of colors and with different blade styles. And it's just having something sometimes that is just a little bit different can be the difference between having a great day and catching all kinds of fish and just having follows. We kind of make our way over to kind of the rubber section here. I use a ton of Medusas and Bulldogs. It's kind of crazy though. I would still say that my favorite bait of all time, you know, rubber bait of all time, is still just a Mag Healy Dog. This is just something that works. This one happens to be homemade, but there's a stock one. But just these things are just so easy to use. You know, they're great. You can fish them just like a dog, or you can just slow roll them after dark. And every year, you know, except for the last couple, we've gotten big fish on them. They're just simple, and it seems like in September when they start to cool off on bucktails a little bit, that's when I'll start to throw the rubber and the blades, and that starts to become a thing. And then kind of going over into this neck of the woods. Swim baits have been something that I was lucky enough that one of my fishing mentors showed me about 10 years ago, and have been extremely powerful. Catch a lot of fish. These are just some of the custom action plastic stuff that we used to use back in the day. But now there's just so many really nice manufacturers of different swim baits. Obviously the Chaos Poseidon is a really good one. The Musky Innovations makes a couple of really awesome ones. It's the regular swimming dog, and then the shallow swimming dog, and then the Wolf Creek stuff is really cool. But swim baits are just one of those things that have so many different applications. You can rip them in, you can straight retrieve them, you can burn them, you can slow roll them. The one thing I've definitely been thinking about a lot this winter is a lot of the guys, we've been lucky enough over the years to guide a lot of Europeans, a lot of guys from Sweden and Germany, and just really starting to pay attention to what those guys are doing with swim baits in their trolling game, and some of the giant pike that they're catching over there trolling them. So I'm going to definitely play around with that this year. I'm going to definitely go with some of the, I'm going to play with the like the European styles of using, you know, the different weights and the different, you know, the different, basically, so you can use different, have it run different depths. And just see if we can't get something going that way. Just something a little different, and I'm sure there's guys that have already been out there and trying it. But that's the big Wolf Creek shad. And another bait I'm super excited about, don't hate me for saying this, Brad, but Brad at Musky Innovations has a pounder version of the shallow swimming dog that I'm hoping that we're gonna get to see here pretty soon. And even if they don't get their harness figured out, I definitely want to just get some of the bodies to try some of that with. Moving over here, the beaver baits. Those are basically, to me, they're like basically a hair swim bait. It's just something that's unique. And 2 years in a row now, we've got 55 inchers on them. They catch giant fish. They catch muskies of all sizes. And they're just, if there's a time where I have to go out and I have to catch a muskie, I'm probably gonna throw a beaver the majority of the time. It's just something that if you throw it all day long, you're gonna get a bite or two. Then moving over to, it's kind of my dive and rise section. Bar fighters are great. I would say last year, or this year, this has been one of the few baits that I actually bought at the shows, but this is a 12-inch Suic with their Franken Suic weight systems. But Suics are really cool, just oldie but goodies. They're my two purchases at the Milwaukee Musky Expo right there. And then last year, the Drifter Croc was an awesome bait for me. It's definitely a finicky bait. It's not a bait for everybody. This is going to seem a little counterintuitive, but I got a few from Ty. I watched him fish with them and got to see him have a few eat it when we fished the mega tournament 2 years ago, and then he had some awesome pre-fishing with it. And he left me a few, and I really couldn't get the hang of the bait. And I kind of called him and was like, what's going on? And he's like, you got to throw it on like a heavy action rod, not an extra heavy rod. It's got to be a rod that has a lot of bend to it. It's a bait that you can kind of easily overwork. And you also want to fish with it more like a twitch bait than you do a jerk bait. If you're hitting it really hard and big log rips like that, you're not going to love the bait. But it's just little tiny like foot long pulls of the rod, and it's just, you're going to get that bait to walk, and it kind of chops and it glides. And I really think the biggest thing, what makes that bait so good is the noise that it makes what makes it unique is that sliding and clicking back and forth in there. This one right here, that's a lure that one of my friends, Jake Schneider, got a 53 incher on with me, and then right after Labor Day, I got a 55 and a half incher on this one. Just a great bait. I think I caught muskies on 4 or 5 different bodies of water with this. Last summer when I went and fished other places, I just strapped one of these things on and they worked. They're really good. Been kind of working down this way a little bit. Have some twitch baits down there. Some of the balsa stuff from Big Game, and then the vexers, and I have some of our old appealers. One thing I didn't get to is down on the other end down there is some of my big fall trolling baits, but use a lot of the supernatural stuff, and a lot of Bill Schwartz's, the 12-inch slammer minnows have been really awesome for me. There's some blue waters down there, and some cool 13-inch dramas, but we're gonna get down here now. This is my favorite section. This is the top waters. This is a lot of stuff right here that I use quite a bit. We use a lot of the Joel Wick and Matt Worth top waters. They both make awesome globes and globes, creepers, and flat tails. Some of our biggest fish that we catch every year get caught on these. These are kind of 2 of my favorite Worth baits right here. These are kind of some really big oversized ones, but this is that Magnum Cisco that he made me 2 years ago, and the first day that I got to use, or the first day I used this one, I got a mega of a 56 incher on it, and then this is a big 12-inch pike that he made me last year, and this thing got all kinds of attention, but I didn't end up catching a big one on this one last year, but I have a feeling I will this year. But Matt's flat tails are awesome. Some of the best stuff that I've used. This is one that's just absolutely just chewed. So I can't remember what year I got this one from. Maybe this one I got in like 2014. And some of my other favorite topwater stuff are like the Joel Wick makes amazing creepers and flap tails. And that's one of my favorite wick. I'm not going to be able to pull any of these off of here. Oh, maybe this one. Yep, there's kind of a wick flap there. But Joel's baits are definitely the baits that got me obsessed with high-end topwaters. They're definitely expensive, but they're worth it. There really isn't that I can remember, a bait that I've gotten from Matt or from Joel that I have not caught a muskie on. And if it's one, it's just because I haven't used it a lot. And I would have to say that my favorite topwater of all time, one that if I had to pick like one singular lure, it's definitely this one right here. This one only comes out during special occasions, usually in September, but it seems like only giant fish like to chase and eat this one. But I can't tell you what it is about this lure. It's just one of those, everybody's kind of got their magic, has a magic bait, and that's just one of them for me. And then another bait that I'm super excited to use again this year, and I'm just kind of hoping it's what's old is new again, is the pacemakers. Gonna definitely started to up my pacemaker game a little bit. I was showing Kurt, that's one of my favorite things to do is I'll take and baits that are really beat up, I'll sand them down, and then this is Rust-Oleum chalkboard paint. It's a matte, flat black, but when you put that in the water, it's just super, super black. I can't even describe it until you put it in the water. It's just like the blackest black you can put on a lure. But then it's also super, super durable. And it just lasts and lasts. Really, really great stuff. And it's just Rust-Oleum chalkboard paint. You can get that at Home Depot or whatever. And then kind of working into my boredom, this one where I started just with some of these are the big Magnum pacemakers, but this is whatever weight comes on the Crocs standard. I don't know if that's like a 1 or 1.5 ounce weight, but just drilled that out and put a little brass, I don't even know what to call that, like the JB weight insert deal, little brass insert. And that is like the perfect amount of weight for this, but went down and threw this in the creek the other day, and it just sits lower in the water, so it pushes a little bit more water and pops really well. So. But yeah, that's kind of it. That's kind of a little tour of my lure wall in the garage here and the boat, and just kind of some stuff that I thought would be kind of fun to talk about. I hope you guys have enjoyed the Cyber Musky show, and it's, obviously this whole climate is a bummer, but there's some benefits of getting to spend some time with your loved ones and people, and just makes you appreciate fishing and getting outside and all that even more. So I'll answer a few questions if there's any on there. Other than that, thanks for watching.